Guest here, Paul, if you guys don't know Paul Stamer. Real quick, before we get started, I'm going to pass something out real quick. We've got some information. We'll go over this today as we go through things, but I want to give everybody a copy before we get started. Feel free to take one or two of them and pass them out or share them. On the back, you'll see an estimate guide. We're going to go through that today. And yeah. Have this be very conversational. The main goal here is to communicate, collaborate, and relationship build. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on slide today. I really, as I mentioned, want to make it conversational and really get an understanding. Yes, sir. What's that?
Labor and materials?
We'll go through it. Yeah. We'll go through it. All right. I'm not going to go through a whole lot of this stuff. So real quick, my name's Will Baxter. My partner, Dave Zimmerman, is down in Duck on his way back. He'll be back tomorrow, so he's not here this time. Thankfully, we had Paul come. Paul, if you would stand up and give us a brief introduction. Brief introduction of yourself and experience.
Thanks for having me. My name's Paul.
A little louder. You got it.
Yeah, it's back here,
but
but
you got to project, my friend.
Thanks everybody. My name's Paul. I've been a carpenter since high school. After carpentry, I've moved over to residential remodeling. Worked as a project manager for a few years, and now I'm working as a estimator. So, main skill is estimating jobs in residential work. Some commercial work we do.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you guys have questions about estimation as we go through tonight, when we have these conversations, Paul, as it says there, he's done over 100 projects with us in the last, I would say, what, 5 years, 7 years? How long has it been?
About 5 years.
About 5 years. So if you do have questions, if you do have help, I know we've got some other folks in the room that can also contribute to tonight's conversation. Some of you all have experience in this. I know, Tom, you mentioned you've done quite a few. Kevin is also with Design Pro and can help us out. I know this is his day job as well. Again, the goal tonight is to really have a conversation around how to estimate renovations, how do you approach renovations, what's the thought process as you approach them, yeah, we'll kind of go from there. Before we go too far, I do want to go a little bit around the room real quick, have a conversation around why you're here, what brought you here today, what you're looking for out of the group. And I'd also like to know kind of what your goals are related to real estate right now. How can we help you? How can we help connect you to the right person, even if they're not in the room today? We've got connection with lots of resources, lots of other grid chapters. Daniel, if you guys don't know Daniel, probably do, but Daniel runs the Manassas grid chapter, great group. And he's also with the CASA team. So lots of good connections in here. But we'll start, if you don't mind. Go ahead and start.
I'm accustomed to standing up when I speak, so I'm trying to. All right, name's Bill Taylor. On the paperwork it says William, IT professional, working in cybersecurity and project management currently. Transitioned out of the military in 2020, and right now I'm trying to get into investment a little bit from the last one. I am an investor. I'm looking for that first deal. That's what I'm looking for. Why do I come to these events? It's the networking opportunity, it's the education. Between the 3 events I've been to now, the insight that you have is invaluable. So, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming out. Tom?
Yeah, Tom Rivenbark. I'm also retired military, 26 and a half years. My wife and I have been doing, between us, real estate investing at some form, starting with fix and flips back in the early 2000s. Transitioned into single families, which we still have 8 doors of that. But 3 years ago, we started getting more into the commercial stuff, multifamily, self-storage, RV parks, shopping center Manassas, and we're currently doing a raise on some mobile home parks in South Carolina and Oklahoma. We're also getting ready to start up a fund probably to kind of spread investors' money around a little bit better as opposed to putting it within one property. I learn, meet people, network, hear different perspectives on things, find out what value I can bring to some of you guys, or what maybe value you can bring to me, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan Nice. Nice to meet some of you and also see some of you again. I'm here because Will's awesome and I love to support this location. Love Clifton, last small town in Fairfax, and love being here. The way I help people is I like to get you, I'm a connector. I like to connect you with whatever resources or people you're currently lacking. You know, whatever's stopping you from getting that next deal, I'd like to put you in the same room with the person who can fix that for you. Right? I'm a big believer in relationships. What am I looking for right now? I am looking for short-term rental property managers that are active in Northern Virginia. I am trying to fill that spot on my roster right now. So if you know of anybody, yeah.
Yeah, we're managing 10 short-term rentals right now.
Thank God.
Shelley, can you hold up the Bowfly Properties logo? So Bowfly Properties is our short-term property management company. We've got 10 properties in Northern Virginia, DC, and Maryland that we manage, including a few that we own.
This just goes to show you, you know, you get what you ask for. So now I'm looking for, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm Ryan. Richard, I've been learning about real estate a lot for, probably about 3 or 4 years now. I've learned about, all kinds of commercial real estate and residential, and I'm really interested in some kind of architecture, design choice kind of, concerns with, fix and flips and rentals and, stuff like that. And, just looking to learn and, hopefully create some good house stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for coming out, Ryan. Kevin.
Kevin next year, I'm here with Design Pro Remodeling, so I'm gonna go over my teammates here. My main purpose here is just to support my team as well as learn from them. It's also cool to, even if you're involved in the business, sometimes hearing these things once again kind of serve as a reminder. Also, just gives you a different perspective. Everyone kind of has a different system, how they approach either a sale or renovation, or how they tackle different things. I'm sure we're gonna go through a lot of these processes in the presentation. But I'm just here to learn, to support, and see who else I can connect with. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey everybody, my name is Tim Otto. I like to describe myself as a budding investor. Funny enough, like everybody else, I do IT sales. Like a few people, I do IT sales during the daytime. But I've been a rate agent with Century 21. I've done mortgage loans, and I recently just got tied in with Design Pro. So the best way to describe what I'm looking for is I'm looking for closing my first deal. I kind of feel like I'm in the red zone on the 7-yard line, and it's 2nd and 9. And it's like, I'm at that point where it's like, I can't screw, I don't want to turn the ball over, and I'm right there. So basically, what I'm looking for is, generating leads for our pay at close program. And I don't know how many people, but I still get triggered by a bad roof. Like if I'm driving and I see a roof, I'm like, oh, I get, I gotta figure out what's going on. You know what I'm talking about.
The pet peeves.
Yeah, so I think I'm one of those guys. If you get a wholesale deal, I probably eyeball the reno, and so I'm here tonight to try to make sure that eyeball stops and we get closer to, what those prices actually are, because I think that's important when you're evaluating a deal. Having a more accurate renovation cost takes that gray area out of the deal. So that's why I'm here tonight to get that fine-tuned piece of info.
And real quick, you have a couple of potential opportunities that you might want to mention.
Yeah. Well, so right now, I guess the one to mention is there's potentially the Redland deal. If we do go into that funding, there's maybe creative financing next month. There may be an opportunity for investment on a smaller scale, but right now there is a deal that there's 4 lots in Apostle, Maryland, empty lots. So if you're looking at investing in land, one deal there, and then another deal, higher end property in McLean, Virginia, possibly going under contract in the next few days. Asking 1.95, reno 350 to 750K, ARV 3.3 million. So that's about a spread of like 200K to 600K.
And you got some potential opportunities in Joplin, right?
Yes.
If anybody knows anybody in Joplin,
Kansas. I'm looking for a property manager first. That's actually the first
Okay.
thing, is to find a property manager in Joplin, Missouri,
Yeah.
because there are possibly 2 properties going under contract. One I have an offer in, and the house next door to the one I put the offer in on did not sell at an auction. So possibly getting 2 houses side by side for rentals.
so if anybody knows anybody or has family or relatives that knows somebody in Joplin, definitely let Tim or myself know. Amy, let's go to Amy and then SJ and then Michelle.
Thank you.
ahead.
Amy Leister, also retired Army, still work for the federal government and my 9 to 5, but because I'm naturally conservative, but I've been super interested in learning, and I've invested a lot in learning about real estate investing in the last year and a half. So like a lot of people I'm hearing, I'm itching to find my first deal and to, so this is fantastic to build the team. And Dan, I don't know if you remember, but we were on a call like 6 months, and I still get your listings of canceled, expired. That's great. But yeah, I just need, but yeah, really, really anxious to get my first deal. So also my partner in crime, Chris, is looking in Ohio too. Well, eventually, in the next probably 5 years, I'll go back to Ohio too, but I'd like to be diversified, and I just think the opportunities here are fantastic, but also interested in like that Akron, Canton area of Ohio as well.
Awesome.
And
Thank
any
you.
kind of real, but I've been really kind of thinking about, fix and flips of course, but holding on to rentals too. So especially with the way interest rates are right now, I have one rental in my portfolio, but that's it right now.
Absolutely. Very cool. SJ.
Hi everyone, I'm SJ. I work with Kaza, and I also work with Design Pro like Will. I myself am really interested in the fix and flips. I've shadowed a lot of them. I've watched through a lot of them. I've seen where they start, where they end, and the whole process is fascinating. And just like Tim's, what was the spread you mentioned?
The spread was on the higher end.
Yeah,
probably like 270 to like 600.
Yeah, I want to see that happen. So, yeah, those are the things I'm interested in, mostly in fix and flips. Visited Will's short-term rental last weekend, and now I'm
spent the weekend there with some friends.
Yep, and now I'm very interested in the short-term rental myself. So yeah, hope to get to meet every one of you, talk to every one of you, and then we can get it going.
Awesome. Shelly? Come on, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, my name is Shelly. I belong to that one. I have 20 years experience in property management, everything from multifamily to flex industrial, GSA, you name it, some medical buildings, a lot. So I did that for 20 years, dropped out of that game, kind of a little tired of it, joined Will DP for a while, helped with the fix and flips that we had. I could sit here and tell you all kind of horror stories, but don't want to scare you guys. So name of the game is honestly it's just about learning. So yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is taking the learns, not the losses, but taking the learns out of each one and knowing the next one how to do it better. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your help tonight. I really appreciate it. All right. So we're not gonna spend too much time on slides tonight. What I really want to do is talk to you more about experience. I will say that I started out. My first thing I did was I went and did courses, and I flew out and did different boot camps around the country. And one of the first things I learned was, hey, get yourself a contractor, right? And not only did I find a contractor, but I ended up partnering with a contractor. My first renovation I say it was a renovation, but my first deal was in DC, Northwest DC, and it was a condo conversion that ultimately we auctioned off demoed after 2 years. So I would say I was partnered with the wrong contractors, with the wrong group to begin with, and really kind of, I wasn't conservative. I was like, let's go and let's do this. And thought I was partnering with the right people that were going to take care of us. And I don't think it was ill-intentioned. I just think it was, they got in over their heads, and bad things happen when you get in over your head. So anyway, really important that you know who you're working with. I pivoted from there. I met Andrew with Design Pro, and I've been with Design Pro for 7 years. I've done over 500 renovations now in those 7 years, and as Shelly mentioned, there's lots of horror stories, there's lots of great stories, so knowing what you're doing and approaching it with a process is probably the most important thing. As with anything in life, approaching it with a methodology, with a process. And so that's really what I want to focus on tonight, is your process, okay? And I really want to talk a little bit about how to approach the renovation when you first drive by that deal. And Amy, you mentioned, hey, I drove by 15 leads this weekend, right? And then what, right? That's the next question. It's like, we see deals all the time, but are they really a deal? And then as you start peeling back the layers of the onion, and you start finding more and more, and you got all these question marks around what's really going to be behind these walls, what's really going to be, how much hair is on this thing, right? That's ultimately something you have to figure out pretty quickly, because you don't have a lot of time. You're worried you're going to miss it. And so you've got to be confident in those numbers. And how do you get confident in those numbers? That's really what we're going to talk about tonight, is how do you quickly become confident? How do you start? And then how do you narrow it in until you're at a decision point, right? This either works or it doesn't work, right? And I think I've said this before multiple times in here. You don't fall in love with the deal, you fall in love with the numbers. That's the most important thing that I can tell you, is focus on the numbers, fall in love with the numbers that work. If you know your number is 15 to 16% ROI, or if you know it's 10 to 13% ROI on a deal, focus on that and make sure you have everything encompassed. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that methodology. So first off, just to kind of look at the process, right? When you approach a deal, you see a house, the first thing that I think you really need to understand is, what's my exit strategy? Where am I going with this thing, okay? Because somebody can look at a number, and Tim mentioned earlier, here's the splits on this thing. Well, clearly if it's selling for $3.5 million, we know it's not going to be a rental unless it's commercial. So like, knowing what you're doing and what level of renovation, and we'll talk briefly about the different levels of renovation and kind of how to approach those as we go through this. Real quickly, before we go into that, so the 4 different levels, right, of renovation. First one, rental grade, okay? It's gonna be a rental property. We're gonna Rubbermaid it, right? We're gonna make sure we can wash it down with hoses. We're not gonna overinvest in it. We're gonna keep it simple and just fix what's broken and get it back on the market, right? Second one, and I'll go back. We'll go back and go through these briefly. Simple rehab, okay? So just a light renovation. We're gonna put some lipstick on a pig and get it back on the market, or potentially hold it again. Basic remodel, a little bit more. You're gonna do the windows, doors. You may have to order some supplies. When you think about timeline, you're thinking probably at least 3 months for something like this. 3 months, maybe a little bit more. All of mine ended up being about double what I thought it would be for the renovation. So Amy, you mentioned being conservative. I think being conservative in your process, in your methodology, and being thorough is really, really important. And then the last one is that major renovation. Most of mine turned out to be major renovations. The ones that have the most hair turn out to be bigger than you ideally think. So let's start real quickly. I actually want to ask Kevin, not to put you on the spot, but I do want to ask you, when you approach a renovation, what is your process? If somebody calls you up and says, hey, can you come take a look at this house for me? Can you just talk to me about how what you do, or what your process is as you go approach that new space that maybe you've never looked at before?
Oh yeah, of course. I think for me is first understanding the caliber of the project, right? So there could be something small as a paint job, so I'm just gonna prep and go with the right tools. But if it's something like, let's say an addition, or like a you know, you're moving walls, shifting like load bearing walls, it might be easier to prepare and schedule that meeting with like an engineer or architect, so you get the right, you know, the right observations and notes for that project. But that being said, the way I start my renovations are usually, you know, schedule an initial estimate. That's after getting the detailed calls. Once I get that estimate done, our meeting would be just gathering notes, measurements, pictures, documenting everything, and then, you know, going in the process of like, and sometimes, you know, like doing research of the prices, because like those tend to vary depending on demand. Then setting an initial like estimate. Now, you have to be really careful about setting an estimate, particularly if you're shifting walls, because a lot of times you don't know what's behind that wall. You can find some like I guess plumbing updates, electrical updates. From my experience now, I don't have as much experience as Will does, but I usually go and even research that property in Redfin or like Zillow just to see how old the property was. And sometimes in those meetings you kind of have to ask, when was the last time you renovated? So you have a better understanding of what's been updated and how long has it been since it's been updated.
That's a great points. I mean, absolutely. And a couple of things I brought here just for tools of the trade. I think you're absolutely right. Number one is to figure out what those metrics are, or what the statistics are on the house. I call them the stats. You know, how many square foot, right? That's probably number one. What's the square footage? Number two, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, right? And start to get those stats. How old is it? That's a great point. How long since it was renovated or since it was built? Gather that information up front. To your point, you can get it off the tax records. You can get it off of Zillow. There's a number of different places you can use your real estate agent that you're working with. Hopefully you have an agent partner that's working with you and helping you run this stuff down and getting that tax information. A couple of different tools I've invested in over the years. I started with this one. Once I realized that this one's slightly inaccurate by a couple 100 feet over a long distance, I went back. That was an expensive mistake for a cheap tool. Huh?
It sucks to reach down and try to touch the ground and walk with that.
Well, it extends, but it wasn't too accurate, and maybe it was because it's in the metric system. I don't know. It says it's feet, but anyway, I went back and got a better one. And so to that point, when I'm looking at landscaping, when I'm looking at driveways, when I'm looking at utilities, distance from the house, if I'm inside, we brought the digital tool, right? If anybody knows what this is, your digital measuring gauge. Having these kind of tools to be able to go in and quickly walk a house. Usually it's best to have a partner as you go through a house if you do have the opportunity to go in. Obviously you'll see up front online, this is a 2,000 square foot house, right? And we will give you numbers. We'll talk a little bit about like the numbers per square foot for like a rental grade, right? So $18 per square foot. I didn't necessarily vet these numbers. They're rough numbers, I think, that we got from Mark and the team at Cosmic Construction. So I would say that any of these numbers that we give you tonight, let's validate, okay? But you can use them for a rough frame of reference. I think they're great for a rough frame of reference. As you go into a property, you need to dial it in. So, you know, if I know that I got a 2,000 square foot house, I've got $18 per square foat. If I'm gonna do a rental, that's gonna give me a rough number. Once I get inside, I need to start working on how many square foot of flooring, how many square foot, how many windows, how many doors, how many squares on the roof, how many linear feet of the gutters. Paul, what other things when you approach a renovation? I know I've sent you to probably hundreds of properties at this point and told you to go get me stuff, right? When I send you to a property like Donald Curtis, and we'll look at Donald Curtis a little bit later, he called me after Donald Curtis and he said, "Will, what did you do?" And I was like, "Well, it's that bad?" And he's like, "I wouldn't have bought it." And I said, "Well, you haven't bought anything yet, so." No, sure. No, but tell me a little bit about when you get to a property that you have no idea, what is your process in taking it from like a rough square footage number down to how do you start approaching the details?
So I guess like the number one thing is like what are we doing with the property? Excuse me. Are we flipping the property or are we doing a renovation for a client? those two different renovations can vary a lot. For a flip, you can do a lot of builder grade items, a lot of bulletproof items like LVT floor, PVC trim, you know, a heavier grade on the paint just for a rental versus a remodel for a client where you have a lot more specifics as far as selections, cabinet designs, cabinet specifics, taking out walls. You know, you have, depending on what level that you're looking at, you have to look at it at that level, if that makes sense.
So it comes back to knowing your exit strategy, knowing ultimately what you're going to do with it to get down to that next level. And as you said over there, Kevin, I mean, I have great relationships with engineers and architects at this point because they're invaluable, right? And to your point about wall removal, to your point about wall removal, those can be big items. And I think knowing what you want to do with the property, having a vision for the property in terms of what it's going to be, I think that's really important. If you go into downtown Manassas, you're not going to renovate the same way you would in McLean, right? That's just a really important thing to know. A lot of the houses in downtown Manassas, you're going to remove walls, maybe more open concept, right? So you do have to approach it and say, okay, for me to get an accurate number, I might need an engineer. I might need an architect to go with me and go with my contractor, right, up front if they don't have that built in. What else?
So back to Donald Curtis, you know, our initial purpose with that project was to rent it out, right?
I think it was to flip it.
Flip it.
I think it was.
I think
So-
originally it was to flip it, and then we ended up getting stuck for a moment, and then we thought, well, we'll rent it, and then we decided to go back to the flip. The problem with that property was we didn't realize it until the very end, and this is where, know your numbers, don't, you know, you gotta be conservative, but you gotta also know what you're doing with it. We had to replace the entire septic, and we didn't count on that.
That's, you're thinking of,
That's,
you're thinking of Wooded Acres.
Yeah.
that's
But,
right.
but no, that's a really important point. I mean, it will change. The property that SJ's mentioning, the short-term rental, that's a flip fail. That's one that started out as a flip. Once we got to put it on the market, there was a lot of hair on it.
I could tell. I could tell when I walked through. Actually.
Come on!
I was like,
That
I was like, oh, it's kind of nice.
That was a flip fail that turned into an Airbnb, and it's been really good since. So it will change. It may change, right? And I think when you approach it, you need to look at the different options that you have and make sure that you have option B, option A, option B, and then you've got your other alternatives. As I mentioned with my condo conversion in DC, it took 2 years to get plans approved by DC. 2 years. We had a squatter, we had neighbors call, I had break-ins. I ended up having to demo it and clean it out because it was dilapidating and falling in. So I had to demo it and put structural reinforcement so that it didn't become a blighted property in the process. So I ended up spending money on a demo just to keep it alive. Thank God I met Matt up at the auction house. We'll keep going. Well, you know, lightning.
That's fine.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So with that particular property, I met a really good auction house. If you guys know Matt Cooper or Alex Cooper auction house up there, I met Matt and we ended up auctioning it off, and we got everybody paid back on that deal after 2 years somehow. So you do have to understand what your plan A, your plan B, and your plan C is. You obviously need to think through that as you're walking through that renovation, right? I think the other thing when I've sent out Paul, the number one thing I'm looking for is scope, okay? So you're getting those stats, and you really need to build out a budget. You need to build out a scope of work, okay? How many windows are there? How many square feet? How many square feet of LVT? How many squares? How many linear feet of windows and doors? You need to comb through the property. One thing I think it said in here a little bit earlier, and I do agree with this, I have done this. I have bought a property without ever setting foot in. And that might have been the septic one, I don't remember. But I've bought more than one property without ever stepping foot in it, and I would say that's a big risk. So very important that you run your numbers before you ever walk out to the property. Run your numbers in advance. Run those rough square footages that we looked at. Run your 18, run your 48. In here we have 100 for a whole home remodel. For an investment property, 100 to 150 per square foot. Now, to Daniel's question, yes, Daniel, this is going to be labor and materials. And it is, I will say that this is more retail, okay? These numbers are what you're probably gonna pay with a Design Pro. And if you and I are working together on a flip, it's, as I've mentioned multiple times in here, get to be partners with your contractor. If you let them know you're an investor, you're gonna get different numbers than if I come out and give you an estimate, right? To be really candid. Because A, I know that as an investor, you might do 12 properties this year. I hope you do 12. I hope you do 20. I'd love to do all of those with you, right? So you're gonna get a different rate than if you do one or you do a retail project versus if you do that and you build that relationship with your contractor. So get to know a couple of contractors, right? Paul may be out of town visiting family. You may have to call Kevin. You may have to call somebody else, okay? So get to know several contractors, be able to get a couple of different prices. Run those numbers before you ever walk out to the house. Then when you walk out to the house, you need to start building out your scope of work, okay? Because that rough number, once you get inside, it could be way worse. It could be, oh man, I walked into a gym. Pull back the carpets, the nasty carpets, and you got beautiful wood floors. We've had that happen where we walked in, we were pleasantly surprised too. So you don't really know, you need to walk through the property, get a very detailed scope of work. The second reason I'll tell you need a very detailed scope of work, for most of us that don't have a couple $1 million in our back pocket, you're gonna have to get funding, okay? If you go get a hard money, the first thing they're gonna say, aside from pulling all your credit and everything and all of that sort of thing, is they're gonna see what's your construction budget? What are you gonna do to the property? What's the exit strategy? And I've got a number of different examples that I can share before and after, where we ran all the numbers before, we ran all the numbers after, and you know, we compared the results of what we expected versus what we ultimately ended up with. Yeah, so as we mentioned, getting that square footage from the MLS, getting it from the tax record, running that number, then going in and starting to drill in. In this guide, in Paul's guide, as you can see, we've got the whole home remodel up at the top, different options for obviously your kind of custom whole home remodel. Below that, you've got your investment property additions. I've got a picture in here. Yeah, so you see that little thing right there? That's an illegal, we had an illegal addition. So we weren't expecting to do an addition, but once we bought it and we started working on it, we learned that it wasn't a properly permitted addition and we got to do an addition. Hall bath remodels between 10 and 13. Primary bathrooms between, I usually say primary bathrooms are between 20 and 25. You can probably do them for 15 to 25, somewhere in that range, primary bathrooms. Again, depending on finishes, depending on moving of, relocation of fixtures, all of that sort of stuff. We'll go back, we'll come back to this. Pull the tax record from the MLS, we talked about that. Kitchens. Kitchens, roughly 50 to 75K. I always say 45 to 75K for a kitchen if you're gonna do a full kitchen remodel. If you're doing the work yourself, you can definitely do it for less than that. You need to think about the appliance packages. Wall removals. Paul, would you talk to us a little bit about wall removals?
Certainly. And
how I know I've had you do a lot of wall removals. What do you look at when you do a wall removal?
so as Kevin mentioned, what is behind the wall, what could be in the wall. A lot of the times what I can do, if I can do it, is I'll make a little exploratory hole. A little 12 by 12 hole, and a couple sections of the wall, make sure that the areas are cleared. The last thing you want is to be sending a change order to your client saying, oh, hey, we didn't see this. So it's best to do as much due diligence ahead of time you can before doing it. You see this range in price here. It can vary from a drop beam, which could be, you know, a simple beam underneath existing joists, or something a little more complicated where it's a flush beam or a flitch beam, some people call them, where you have to essentially recess a beam into a current floor cavity. A lot more involved, a lot more charges. Main thing is with the wall removal though is do a little exploratory work if you can. You know,
It's hard to do that before you buy the property or put it under contract, right? So and that's the one thing I do want to balance is like we have run into a number of I'm trying to think of it. Was it Bowler, Shelley? Bowler. We walk in, you know, we have a lot of these townhouse kitchens where you're going to open up the walls, you're going to do a pass through out the kitchen, and you're going to do an overhang. You're going to take that old galley style kitchen and you're going to open it up and put an island in there, and then you go down to the basement. And I think that's what we had to do because we couldn't open up walls before we bought it. Go down to the basement and look at the plumbing lines and try to figure out where that stuff's going. And again, that's a guess. Again, that's a guess because you may have a gas pipe coming in on the main level. Again, those things can be relocated, so it's usually not the end of the world, but that cost can be significantly higher. When it comes to relocating pipes, right? Relocating, how much do you, if you do have to relocate pipes behind walls, like what do you roughly, you know, what do you got to account for pipes behind walls, duct work behind walls, things like that?
Well, the number one thing I look for is which way to the floor joist or which way does the framing and trend wall run. If you have to work against the framing, you have a lot more of a headache of relocation versus if you could just slide it down in between two 2x10 floor joists, not too much of a headache. So the main thing is if it's possible within the current framing, or if you're willing to do all that extensive reframing to relocate.
That's
another thing. Another point I wanted to make is, in some homes you can kind of tell what walls are load bearing and what walls aren't load bearing. So any wall that's load bearing, obviously you're going to have to put a beam to support that load, as opposed to a non-load bearing wall, which is very popular in a lot of older homes. People just build walls just because it was aesthetically pretty back then. And a lot of times you can just take them out, patch the drywall, and not worry about it. So it's sometimes you have to have a professional go out there, examine the project, see what's possible, or an engineer if you can swing it, see if it's feasible or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Looking at the direction of the floor joist, when you go into a townhouse, figuring out if they go this way or this way, and do they run front to back, do they run side to side, that'll tell you whether they're gonna sit on a load-bearing wall in between, or whether they have a load-bearing wall this way. It'll tell you kind of the load of that. Also, go in the basement, look at the floor, look underneath. If they've got anything unfinished, that'll start to tell you a little bit about the direction. You can likely assume, are all floors like the same direction, or do they don't cross them, right?
Generally, as far
So if you have multiple levels,
it corresponds to the floor level.
all the way to the roof, right? So if you can get into the attic or you can get into the basement and see which way the floor joists run, that'll often tell you where you can move and how you can relocate things forward or backwards.
And a lot of times, homes will have what's called a point load in the center of the home. There will be a point load going all the way from the top of the home to either the basement or the crawl space. All of the point load is stacked within the same point, so you can assume that bearing point is pretty much consistent throughout the levels of the home.
Basement refinishing, we've got numbers on here for a basement refinish. Wet bar, that's a very, very common thing to do. Finishing basements a great way to add value. Adding bathrooms to a basement, and I don't think we have adding a bathroom in here. I often think
Typically, it's about like a master bedroom price, just because of the groundwork that we have to do.
yeah. So if you have like a hall bathroom's 10 to 13, usually installing a brand new bathroom in a basement, 15 to 20, given the amount of concrete work that you probably have to do. Permitting clearly has to be done if you're going to do that.
And a lot of times people will base their basement bathroom addition on where the plumbing runs in the house.
Right.
If you're gonna have to, If your bathroom's over here and your main plumbing stack is on the other side of the house, you have a lot more groundwork to do versus just relocating your bathroom closer to that groundwork that's currently in place.
Yep, that's a good point. Let me ask anybody out here that's done some of these, any thoughts on whether anyone not pulled permits for a project that they've done?
Oh, wow. I haven't done a project.
Okay.
Not full permits?
Not pulled permits.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely possible. I've done a lot of flips without pulling permits. Just, we'll cut this out. We'll cut this portion out of the video.
Especially if it's pool replaced.
Depends. If it's a boom replace, not necessarily. If you're, I think if you're moving, I think it also depends on what the homeowner decides and what their budget is a lot of times too.
Yeah.
But ideally, you want to pull permits. You want to make sure things are done properly. That also helps you not only stay accountable, but also gives that sense of relief for, to your client or homeowner that things are being done properly and inspected by a third party. Now, depending on who your contractor is, I guess you want to partner with the contractor who is also really knowledgeable in how the inspection process looks like and what it looks like to make the pool permits as well. So that's
I've done a number of flips without permits, and I'll tell you that it's always a calculated risk. Okay, just being candid. It doesn't mean I'm going to do shoddy work. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do the work to code. We're always going to do the work to code. The difference is how much time does it take to go through the permitting and how much previous problems am I going to be stuck with potentially and have to go back and fix that maybe I didn't create, right? That does sound like a liability problem. Anyhow, the point is permits is an important decision. I always recommend that when you go to sell a property, if you've got everything properly permitted, trust me, you're not going to have quite the pucker factor that we've had when you don't do permits and you're hoping, okay, I can get through this smoothly without having a problem. If I'm doing one in Fort Washington, we've done other ones there, we didn't pull permits. We ripped out a renovation in, 60 days. So if you're looking to go lightning fast, you don't necessarily want to be slowed down by that process. It is an option. I'm just saying that. That's all I'm putting out there. Go ahead, Ashay.
Not that I'm saying never pull a permit, but if you do, there's also an element of how long are you gonna have the dumpster in front of the property? How long are you gonna have guys on the roof? How long are you gonna do if you do a pop top addition and you decide not to pull a permit, that's gonna raise some flags. So just keep that in mind.
When we're talking about not pulling permits, I think we're talking mainly about a pull and replace with slight relocation.
Thank you.
Like a flip.
Yes, thank you,
I'm
Paul.
looking at
Thank
it
you,
back
Paul.
here like,
We're not putting an
what in the
addition on
hell
the
are
back
you
of the
telling
house
these
with
people? No, like-
pergolas
Yes,
or a
yeah.
pop top. Just want to
Yeah.
make that clear.
Yep.
But to SJ's
agree.
point, if you're doing a flip and you got a whole bunch of nasty carpet, drywall to replace, so you bring a dumpster in the front of the house, the county may fine you. The county may require a dumpster permit. So just be mindful of that. If you are doing a sneaky quick, lightning quick flip, maybe do a little trash pile in the backyard, and then have your team come back, with a trash truck and shuttle trash in the back and front yard as stealthily as possible.
So again, I'm more of a.
By
I
the
don't
book
go in
guy.
depth. I don't go in depth with that, but is it permits required? Is it by jurisdiction or permits required for any type of it can't be any type of remodel.
No,
We're
there's
talking about-
each county has their own stipulations. Like, hey, this might require a fence permit. Other counties don't require a fence permit. It kind of falls along the same lines as like HOA ordinances and things like that,
gotcha.
right?
Okay, yeah.
And it is a liability. I mean, I'm sure we did one. I remember one that we did where we didn't pull permits. We waited until we got our first stop work order, and then we got permits. Not the way to do it, right? That's gonna certainly slow you down in the long run. Then you got to go back and explain why you didn't do it. Then you got to deal with a pissed off inspector that thinks you're trying to cut corners, right? And so that can definitely create all kinds of headaches for you. So I think it's really important that we do mention that.
And that is kind of one of the many gray areas of remodeling.
It is.
It's a questionable thing. You could push this wall back of the house that you just got a foot, but then you got to push a toilet flange back a foot. You're not relocating a major gas line. So it's the call that you have to make. Like I said, we're not doing this major relocations without permit. strongly suggest doing permits.
Absolutely.
I think
It's
Paul
just
has
the
it,
minor
yeah, I think Paul identified that.
relocations, mainly, you know, sink, plumbing, vanity, gas stuff, would probably recommend pulling a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kitchen remodel, it was basically remove and replace, but we did add an extra counter on the island to get one unit bigger. The sidewall that did not have a countertop ended up with a bar setup. That's that gray area, but it,
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if I'm not relocating plumbing and I'm not adding circuits, and you can even talk to an inspector, you can call an inspector, call the county and say, hey, this is what my scope of work is, what on this scope needs to be permitted, right? Go get the answers. Thankfully, we have a great relationship with Tim, our engineer. We just send it to him and say what needs to be permitted. He'll look at the local ordinances for us and come back and say, here's what it's gonna look like for you. And then you budget, you do need to budget in those costs. So that's why I bring it up, is just because, you know, again, you get halfway into a project and then you're like, let's remove that wall. Okay, well then we just triggered permits, right? If we're gonna remove a load bearing wall, we're gonna need plans, we're gonna need to go, okay, so what's the cost of going back and doing that? Yeah.
Timeline as well.
Definitely the timeline.
Like,
It will
more permits
absolutely.
you pull, more inspections you need, longer the timeline goes.
Yep, absolutely. And each county is different, right? So knowing the jurisdiction that you're gonna do the flip in, being familiar with local regulations, having a local resource that can help you get through those. DC was a nightmare. I mean, I still won't go back into DC because of DCRA. I've got scars on my back.
But
Definitely.
you also have to be careful, it's not just Fairfax, like, it's not just like a county, you also look at city. So like city of Fairfax,
Yeah.
you will have to pull county and you'll have to deal with city. If you don't deal with city, you will be in a big, like, you'll be in big trouble. They will. shut
Historical
you down.
district.
Huh?
Yeah.
Historical district.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother level.
Manassas City, Alexandria, you have to be very mindful of the city and the county. I agree to Paul's point, if it's a rip and replace, you're not doing anything similar to what we did with our home bathroom. We didn't pull permits on our home bathroom. Our kitchen renovations, we absolutely pulled permits because I put a 20-foot steel beam in my kitchen when I opened up the wall. I was absolutely pulling permits with that, so.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mr.
Just one more thing about the permits. What really helps an inspection is getting to know the inspectors, right? So like Kevin, Paul, me, Will, Shelly, you know, we've been in it, we do a lot of work in Fairfax County. We see a lot of the same inspectors. If you build a good reputation, like hopefully we have, you know, this one inspector, I love him. His name is Mono. He comes in every morning. He says, I ask him, how are you doing? He says, blessed every time. I count on him saying this. I would bet money on him saying this. That's how often I've gotten to know him. And I did something wrong in a job. I didn't spray foam, or I didn't put insulation in a specific spot. I didn't think I needed it. And he said, it's okay, SJ. Just send me a picture. Like, we're not allowed to do this. Don't tell anyone I did this. Sorry, Mono. I told everyone in the room. But he said, look, like you usually don't make this mistake. Just send me a picture that you're gonna do it right now, and I'm gonna head off, and then I'll pass you. Is that cool? And I'm like, yes, thank you so much. If I got an inspector I didn't know, or if I wasn't reputable enough and I didn't know the guy coming in, he definitely wants to be. I would definitely have waited another week for that inspection. So yeah, that's a huge benefit of getting a good contractor on your side.
No, any other questions on that? Any other thoughts on permitting or anything there?
So I've had quite a few people have problems with like decks and permitting because it's like this thing where like a tree falls into the deck and like a railing is like taken out by it, but then they can't find a contractor who will work on it because the deck was built in like 1980 and the code was different than it is today, and so they say the only option is to rebuild the whole deck, but then they like don't have money for that. It's like just this one part is damaged, and so it can be kind of frustrating.
Yeah. No, and that's absolutely true. As the codes change, I'll tell you that's one thing that's really frustrating is, like, if you go ask the county right now, what are we on, like 2019 code? They're like, oh yeah, we're on the 2016 code, and you're like, what are you talking about? We're getting ready to upgrade to the 2019 code, and you're like, that's 4 years ago. But they have different variants of code, and if you a deck that maybe doesn't have bracing against the house, or you know, doesn't have proper footer, I mean, you know, something like that, usually I would think footers would be something that.
And also to your point, it's up to a, you know, creative contractor to come up with a creative solution to somehow utilize the existing deck of the 1970 structure, but also utilizing code that the county will accept.
Paul is said creative contractor. Just so you know.
All cards on the table.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
I can help answer that question.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, so like funny enough, I was working in a project in Annandale where the existing deck actually exceeded their property line into their neighbor's property line. So when you're doing renovations for decks, first thing you want to ask is the plan of the house, right? To see where those parameters are at. Now, I think in the case if you're just taking out decking boards or fixing a railing, you don't really need permits for that or inspection. It's like if you do like a handyman job, taking that out, putting something new in. Now, if it's a matter of like messing around with the foundation, like the posts, as well as like expanding on the square footage of the area, then that's where I would highly recommend getting that done. I mean, to just answer your question, because a lot of times people want to update like from a pressure treated to like something like the Trex, for example, right? And you're just pulling decking boards out, if I'm being honest with you. Now, if we identified that the foundation, you know, there's rotten wood in there, then yeah, we want to make sure we also get things done properly as well, right? And if you have a contractor who's willing to install like decks, decking boards on a rotten foundation, I think that raises a red flag. You know, I wouldn't do work where later on you're gonna have to like have other problems, right? So that's on that. I mean, and I think for rental properties, if you don't mind,
Please.
in terms of renovation, I think the biggest issue that I see is like a lot of people or investors, because I work with a lot of investors as well. They look at rental properties. They're renting the property from the previous household, right? So one thing you have to look at is that's no longer your home. Take away your emotions out of that picture and look at it as you're having tenants in that new household, and they probably don't really care as much, you know. So you want to use products that are reliable or finishes that are reliable and, you know, last long. Not the cheapest stuff, because that's gonna break really easily, right? You want to appeal it for the masses. And I think just in general for the finishes, a tool that I like to use, it's in the Home Depot. Like Home Depot has like, I think everyone can create an account for free. You can make a list of finishes there, and it tells you like what your total of finishes will look like. I can pull it up on my computer if you guys want to look at it after the meeting. But that gives you like a brief estimate of like, okay, if you add a toilet, if you add like X amount of square footage for tile, if you add like some light fixtures, what is that total gonna look like, right? And make sure it's not you know, custom made stuff like maybe from Ferguson, something to appeal for the masses where like if it's broken, you can easily replace like those things. And I think that's gonna save a lot of money as well.
That's a really good tool for, you know, if you're able to look at a property on Zillow or Redfin and see that, hey, I don't need a toilet, I need new grab bars, I need a new shower door. Home Depot has that tool where you can create that list, that card, and add that to your budget.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, and you made me think with the plat. Everybody knows what a FOIA. I know you know what a FOIA request is. Freedom of Information Act. I have done that Chesapeake property. Had I done a FOIA request before I bought it, I would have learned about the amount of hair on it. And you know, I got a FOIA from the county. It was a 20-page document with all sorts of legal trouble, county issues, health issues, things like that. And oftentimes you'll get a plat, and then you might find an addition that's built onto that property that's not on the plat, never been permitted, that you will now be responsible for handling. So that's a really good point, gathering that information in advance. We're actually gonna watch a video real quick. This is a property in Woodbridge. I actually bought this, I think this was my 4th or 5th property I bought from a wholesaler. This is the one that Paul walked into and said, what are you doing? So I hope everybody can see this. I wish we had a bigger screen in here, or a wider video, but can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
It's got some stuff.
Holes in the walls. I actually met the guy that was sleeping in the bed.
putter.
There was a guy, yeah, there was a guy sleeping in the bed.
Jeez.
Oh, he was alive. He was actually living there. No, he was literally living there. Yeah, he was actually living there. So this is a Matterport. So for any project that we typically go out and do, this is the project that we just looked at demoed. This is how we, as professionals, get square footages. So we can go in and measure certain floors. The new version of Matterport does actually just do this for you.
I'm not following, so I'll be the newbie to ask. What's the name of this report you're talking about?
This is called Matterport. This is a most agents will use this for on putting a property on the MLS. For your showing time, or if you want to drive through the property. It's called a Matterport. And so you'll see this stove in the basement. This was my wall that was kind of sinking in. You can probably tell the floors. So when Paul and I first went in this property, it was to the ceiling with junk. It took 6 or 8 dumpsters for the team to unload this property. You could see the floor was sloping like this, and the wall, the concrete wall in the basement was bulging in. We ended up putting a new bathroom, and I'll show you guys in a little bit, I think. A new bathroom right here in this corner after we repaired the walls. The HVAC was fine. I don't know why.
So when you have walls like that, is that foundation?
Yeah, it's foundation, and depending on how bad it is, repairing those can be really expensive. They make these carbon fiber straps that you have to have a specialist, a guy named Ram, I think that's what his name was. Ram. There's other guys too, I'm sure. But they put these carbon fiber straps, they put tension on the walls, they put the wall back in, and then they bolt these straps in all the way across the wall. It can be very expensive. This one right here, you can't see it back in there, but there's an oil tank back down there. And so we had to remove an old oil tank, convert the old furnace into a new modern furnace.
What year was this house?
This was,
There's the tank.
yeah, there's the tank. Yeah, the tank's there. I don't remember off the top of my head. I might have it on the next slide. It was fairly old. Yeah. We ended up having to replace, talking about inspection, we ended up having to replace this. These joists, or these pipes right here, these posts, I should say. First we try to repair, we try to fix. We actually just put some stuff on top of them, like welded steel blocks. And then the inspector came in and said, nope, put new posts in there. We were like, aw, we'll put new posts in there, whatever you need. We ended up removing this door up here at the top of the deck because we had a second one.
Yeah, those stairs are broken.
Oh, we replaced the stairs.
You actually had to pull the stairs out to get the tank out.
Yeah, it was scary. I mean, this was a hairy one.
You send your guys down there, they rip up the stairs, how do we get back up?
I mean, I thought it was kind of like one of those funny. I thought it was kind of like one of those funny houses, right?
Hey, ride to come along.
They got a Spider-Man in their way up the wall.
So yeah, here was the back kitchen, which was technically, I believe, sort of like an illegal addition. Right?
Yes.
It was, but the county didn't bother us about that. They were like, well, it was there when you bought it, and we didn't, and structurally we fixed anything, and they forced us to fix anything that we couldn't. You'll see a door out onto the deck there. We opened up and removed some walls here in the kitchen. Yeah, Paul went round and round with the inspectors about this roofing and ceiling and joists, if I remember correctly, multiple times. We ended up opening all of this up, so this was open in the main level. We actually added a bedroom. So this room right here became an extra bedroom upstairs. So we went from a 3 and 1, we sold it, I think, as a 4 and 2. So we added a bedroom and a bathroom, which saved our butt in terms of final numbers and stuff, because we spent way more than we thought we were going to have to. What I thought I was going to have to. We closed that door off, or So, and then fully renovated this upstairs hall bathroom. Just to give you an example. Now, that was the before video and pictures. This was what it looked like afterwards. And I can send you out to the examples and the case studies on these. There you go. So renovation cost on that one was $175,000. I don't have that off the top of my head. I can pull those up for you here in a second.
What did you buy it for?
I bought it for $185. Bought it for $185. Paid a $15K wholesale fee. Put $175 in. Yeah, it still worked out. I mean, this was 3 years ago. So the market was thankfully still roaring, and by the time we were done, we were just really thankful of the continued appreciation. It wasn't until last year things kind of got really slow, and we really lost money on a couple of deals that just because the market just didn't keep rolling, and we didn't have to be as tight on our numbers. We could overspend on all of our deals, and we were still making out okay. So I think the conditions of the market will also make you more conservative in your renovations.
How long did the renovations take?
It's, well, I found one,
17 years. I mean, it was.
Let me just add something.
How long was it? It was a long time.
Let me just add something here. This particular project was literally everything was wrong with it. Everything was wrong with it. So if you ballpark that square footage with these numbers, they're not going to correspond.
It's a really good point.
Literally, everything was wrong with this house. So, you know, generally speaking, on a house that's upkept by a proper, you know, a homeowner, and you buy it, maybe, you know, you got some stinky carpet, some walls of paint, you know, this is more so to follow, not a total, like, the house should have been knocked down.
Yeah, so to that point, you know, I know a little bit, meaning that, you know, I can kind of, you know, I have you guys. So like when what I know runs out, I'm down with you guys up. But what if I don't have you guys? I'm an investor. I look, you know, I got a list of properties in Baltimore. I got the pictures. I'm thinking, this thing can't be in that bad of a shape. I click the picture, and as I like to say, you can't eyeball it. Obviously, you can tell, you know, you can go on and price a window. You can go on, you know, you can go on a website and see how much it costs to put basic grade windows, maybe what, you know, roofing may cost. But how do you, as an investor with no team, let's say that, handle, so this, like you're saying, that renovation was almost the same as the house, as the acquisition. So how would I be able to move from seeing that property or seeing the, you know, the condition to being able to estimate all this?
So, Tim, as an investor, somebody who doesn't have, you know, the field time, who hasn't had a tool belt on for a decade like I have, like, you're like in a bit of a rut, you know, like, straight up. So your best mode of action is to find a team, to build a team, I would say. Your second best mode of action is get real friendly with YouTube, get real friendly with Google, because I mean, Google and YouTube nowadays, I mean, you can have the world in your hands if you watch enough of it, and you act like a sponge. So to that point, you know, you just got to kind of do your own research, kind of treat it as a hobby, because you know, a lot of people are kind of treating this as a hobby. It's not like you're, you know, I mean, you know, doing it to, you know, make some extra money. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but for the most part, it's a hobby for people, right? So it's up to you to kind of like school yourself and you know, do your own research on, you know, the house was built in 1940s. Okay, all the walls are going to be plaster, not drywall. That's a whole nother ball game.
Right.
As far as you know, paint and prep and
see, that's
patching. You know, built prior to the 1950s, probably not going to have insulation in the walls. Right. So you can go ahead and bet that it's going to be real hot in the summer and real cold in the winter. Right. You know, there's a lot of these different variables for different period, you know, the period of homes. Stuff built in the 70s, to my experience, isn't built as strong as stuff prior to the 60s.
Right.
You know, generally seems like in the 70s, tract homes were real popular, and they just started just building houses, pumping them out. Nowadays, in 2024, you walk across a floor of a home in 1970, more than likely the side table shakes next to you, just because that was the quality.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, like I said, back to the point of do your own research, kind of school yourself. You know, there's tons of stuff out on YouTube. Like there's some of you might be familiar with the program This Old House. I mean, it's an old program, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you tune in, you can learn quite a few things.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I add on that a little bit? Just to answer your question. Yeah, like I don't think you can really do it without a contractor.
Right.
To be honest with you, like even as a
Right.
contractor, it's extremely. Sometimes you have to take those risks. That's why it's called an estimate, right?
Right.
Because like you don't know what's gonna happen when you turn on the wall. You don't know like when was the last time they replaced like the direct track unit, for example, right? What I would recommend now, if we have a preferred contractor, let's say that like we have Paul's contact, right? I would suggest if you're there by yourself, just take detailed pictures of every single room and take the square footage of every single room, right? And once you send that out, like it's a little easier to like for a Matterport, looking at that, you can kind of get a bit of feel of what's going on in that specific area. Now knowing the square footage is help kind of provide like a certain range of numbers, but then again, it's not going to be down to the exact.
Right. And I guess until you actually get in there.
Yeah, but
and even then, so like this was the property. This was Donald Curtis, my favorite property. You can almost see it in there, right? That's the property beforehand. And let me actually read. You guys saw we spent $175 and sold it for $475, right? Let me read you what I wrote to the hard money lender when I asked for the money, right? So it was built in 1973. I was expecting it will take 3 months. Purchased May 14th, 2021, and we would be listing it September 6th, 2021. And we will keep it the same. So this is what Will wrote to the hard money. This is our strategy. I said this is a small single family in a nice Northern Virginia neighborhood experiencing lots of renovation. The home is outdated but in solid condition. I was very wrong. It was so full of stuff that even with a contractor, that you couldn't see the walls, you couldn't see the floors, you couldn't see the problems because it had 8 dumpsters worth of stuff in front of everything. I said, we purchased it for $185, we will spend $50,000. That's what I told them we'd spend. That was my construction budget. We were a little higher than that.
You're eyeballing them.
New flooring, new carpet, just some fresh paint, lipstick on a pig. We'll put some new appliances in. The house will feature updated recessed lights throughout, very modern fixtures. Upper stairwell, foyer, entry foyer. We'll modernize the stair railing, create a new mud room, which we didn't do. Entryway with books. A lot of this stuff I use as a template for every deal that I do. We will also be adding a bedroom, 1.5 bathrooms, and on the exterior we'll landscape and put a new driveway in. We never put a driveway in. The ARV was around $350. At the time I bought it, the ARV was $350. The benefit for that renovation taking 18 months was market went up.
Wow.
And I sold it for $475.
Yeah.
And so, thank goodness that the market was continuing to go up. But I think that's a really good example of me like going at something without really understanding all the things behind it, right? I think we did I don't know, it was roughly 5 or 6 properties that year specifically. So we were running a gun and we were buying 2 or 3 every other month. We were buying 1 or 2. And so we were just kind of moving at the speed of light. So slowing down, making sure that you're actually looking at the deal, making sure that you're falling in love with the numbers, making sure that you're taking a contractor or 2 through those properties physically, walking through, looking at the worst case scenarios, and then making sure that the numbers still make sense at the end of that. In these kind of market conditions, you're not going to get lucky, right? I mean, right now it's tough. And so anyway, any other questions about Donald Curtis? I wrote these exit strategies. I'm really glad the hard money lender made me get good at writing exit strategies up front, so that I knew what I was like intending to do at least. And then after the fact, we could go back and really reverse engineer how did we do. right? And that's to Shelley's point, it's all about learnings. I mean, you know, you're not failing unless you quit, right? Unless you quit, you stop, I'm not doing that anymore, I'm done, hang it up, which I thought about a number of times. But, you know, after 500 of these, we've learned a lot of lessons. I think we're almost out of time. I kind of want to pause and just give us some time to talk through. This was Walden. This was in downtown Manassas, or near Manassas Park, I believe. This one turned out pretty good. We bought it for $275. We sold it for $487. We ended up spending $140. Again, if I go back to the exit strategy, I think we said we'd spend 80 to 85, something in that range. We ended up spending an extra $40K on the rear addition that we had to replace due to an illegal, improperly built addition. We did not want to put, that was the thing, is like, I don't think we permitted it, but we did build it correctly. We took down the improperly built and we built it absolutely 100% correct. And we built it that we could stand behind.
So question about that, and,
Yep.
and I'm just putting this out. So if I were to put a deal under subject to, renovation costs were going to be X amount of dollars, I know the ARV is going to pay that all off. Could I just get the hard money loan just for the construction costs?
No, you probably not. There might be a lender to do that, but I'll tell you what, if they wouldn't have any leverage, right? The reason a hard money lender does this is because he's going to come to me knocking on the door here in about 6 months, and he's going to go, "You done yet, dude? Because if not, I'm going to take this back, and then I'm going to resell it and make money on it anyway."
So they want that property.
They need that recourse.
Gotcha.
So and I think from a subject to, you also run a lot of risk because obviously
They could pull out.
they could pull out, they could try to pull out. So, and we'll talk about that next month on how do you lock those things down.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
But that's the thing that scares me about novations, just being transparent.
Yeah.
It's like a novation is where they get out of the property, but you agree to a certain price that you're going to give them, and then you're hoping that your numbers are going to turn out. Well, you end up spending double. You can't sell it for that, so you're not going to get your money back, right? So there is more inherent risk in that type of deal. This I could have rented, wait for the market to continue to go up. I think it's even more now.
Are hard money lenders lending at about the same rates in 2021 as now? Has there been a lot of change?
No. We actually, great point. So we were on the Washington Capital Partners Frequent Flyer program, if you will. We had done so many of them. So we were getting 6%, which is lower than you're getting retail now, and on hard money, which was unheard of. When I first started, my first couple were like 10 to 12%, especially when I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
We had worked it, we had gotten it down to where we were getting 6%, and they would lend us the 100% of renovation cost.
Wow.
Which we didn't always need to take, but it was great to be able to go do that draw and then get the next one. So that was huge. Now it's about 10. I mean, I can still get it for, somewhere around 9, 10, 11. And then to your point, you got to find a private money lender. Like for that 40, 50K renovation or whatnot, find a private money lender. You can still pay them a good, deal or split some equity. It's a great way to go with a joint venture partner that doesn't want to deal with it. They just you handle it, and I'll partner and get a little bit of equity and a little money back. Pay them back for the cost of their money. That's one, and then give them a little bit of equity out of the deal.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to get private money. This is that one I mentioned in Fort Washington. Last deal we'll look at, and then we'll pause. This was a 120K renovation. We bought it for $342, sold it for $547. Did okay on that one. Lots of hair on that one too, but that one actually we learned a lot from Donald Curtis on this one. This was probably 2 years later, so we had learned a lot about going into an older house and kind of a neighborhood that might have those homes that are like 70s homes that you're going to find structural issues, you're going to find sunken concrete, things like that. Any questions on these? No?
So something that I've always thought about is like if you're renovating a much older house, like one that's built in like the 40s or 50s, you run a lot more risk of encountering some kind of like really toxic materials, right?
100%.
Like lead paint.
1978 is a lead paint rule, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
anything before 1978, you're gonna expect there might be lead paint.
Yeah. I mean, Greenbrier up there in Fairfax, those houses were built in the '60s, so it's like, it's like I spent so much time growing up hanging out in those houses. It's like I wonder how many of those have lead paint in.
We all
Yeah. I see deals all the time on the market, like out in, further out, that are sitting out kind of farmhouse from the, 40s or 50s. Scares the crap out of me. Haven't done so many that look like they're fine and they're completely like this. You go, I mean, we looked at a few further out, near Front Row or Gainesville, further out that way, and it was like, you're gonna pay more to tear it down and rebuild. Like, you gotta tear it down and rebuild it. So the really old ones do scare me for sure. I mean, not that they can't be done, not that they can't be reinforced, but it's almost like that custom thing. I mean, Dave's not here, so I don't want to go into his story about the barn, but he's got a barn here in Clifton, and it was built in what, the 1800s?
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was built, and he's built around this barn. He rebuilt the outside of it, but there's still structure from the inside from like the late 1800s or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's not that old, but anyway, yeah. So there's.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was just wondering if there's kind of a year that you kind of like, a decade that you like over.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Like,
It's not so much about like the time period as like
The house
quality of the
Yeah.
house.
I would say anything pre-war, probably like so.
Which
there's-
war?
which
The
war?
last one.
What are you talking about?
The last one.
The
So-
Civil War.
So, there is a benefit, there's a benefit, and there's definitely a curse to an old home. Old homes are generally really solid. Sometimes you can walk into an old home up a set of stairs, and you won't feel the bounce because.
Are you talking like 40s, 50s then, or?
I would, yes, stopping at around 45.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like 60s and newer.
But at the same time, you have a lot of lead paint, asbestos to deal with. Probably no insulation in the house. So there's
Wiring,
give and take to
plumbing.
older homes. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's.
Yep, you're replacing
Nothing like
wiring.
a
I mean, we
glass
had to
fuse.
replace all the wiring, all the plumbing, those kind of
Fuse
things.
box, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you guys. I really appreciate the attention span and all the engagement. I mean, I think this has been really, hopefully it's been helpful for everybody here. It's a great refresher for me to go back and look at this stuff and remember all the lessons, to
Nightmares.
Shelley's point. I would say what I would, next month, okay, is creative financing. Again, we're gonna focus on subject to. I'm gonna bring in somebody that's very, very well versed in subject to innovations to talk to us. Bring a friend, come back. The goal of this group, okay, is not to stand up and watch me or anybody else lecture, okay? I really want it to be educational and formal or informative, but I definitely do not, I want it to be a group that does deals, okay? First and foremost, I want this group to turn out deals, okay? And I don't care if I'm a part and make money on them. I want to see you make money. I want to see you be successful. I want to see this group grow. I want to see us have 40 to 50 people in here by the holiday. So, I just ask that all of you guys, invite a friend next time, right? And see if you can get somebody out. I promise that I will do everything I can to bring the content, make sure that we've got good content. And we're working on a pipeline. I know SJ, myself, a few others, we're working on a deal pipeline so that we can put deals out to the group. They're not all going to be a fit for you. But if you have a deal, if you know what you're looking for, let me know. We are doing reverse prospecting for deals. Okay, so if you know I'm looking for this criteria, I'm looking in this particular region, this is about my budget, we've got a process right now where we will go out and call every realtor in that real area and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Do you have anything or do you know of anything? And a lot of times what we find is that there's an agent who's talked to a friend and they know they're gonna list the house in a while, or they know they're in a bad situation and they don't know what to do about it, right? And we can come in and provide that solution within this group. There's another opportunity, we'll talk about it next month, where we've got, and this might be a thing for you, Tom, Adil's got a program for raising capital. So if you want to do, and I'm not even gonna try to talk about it right now, but there's a program he's got for being able to basically run syndication or bring in local investors. And the neat thing about what it does is you can bring in up to 50 to 100 investors into a single deal. You can raise up to, I don't remember what the amount is. $5 million. And so if you're looking to do something commercially or go out and be able to, I would love to be able to do this for this group, get a fund together of $5 million to where somebody needs a deal, we lend them the money and they go do it, right?
But there is a point to, and again, this is probably not the meeting to elaborate.
Agreed.
But the cap is 5 million, but let's say your minimum is 375. Once you hit that 375, you can start doing draws while you're still collecting or funding the remaining the remaining amount. So something to dig into, and again,
Yeah, so next month will be all about creative financing, finding deals subject to innovation. So anyway, thank you all for coming out. Really, really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.